Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to present my proposal seminar with the title, The Effectiveness of the Monetary Policy Transmission Mechanism on Asset Price Channels in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Kezia Pinaria with student number 170161905. I'm from the Bachelor of Economic Education 2019. I have Professor Dr. Harya Kunchara Wiralaga, MSI, as my first supervisor, and Professor Dr. Ari Saptono, SEMPD, as my second supervisor. The first chapter is Introduction. In Introduction, there are research background, problem formulation, and research purposes. Research background. So, in 2020, Indonesia experienced a contraction in economic growth of -2.07% and deflation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the government has issued fiscal and monetary policies to overcome this. The Indonesian economy is projected to grow positively in 2021 and 2022 at 3.70% and 5.31%. In this picture, there is an Indonesia's annual growth rate from 2011 to 2022. Despite of that, the number of investors in the capital market has increased significantly in the 2020 to 2022 period. For stock investment itself, the highest level of IHSG of all time was reached in 2021 at level 6.435. This data is published by PD Custodian Center of Effect Indonesia, KSEI. So, in this research, we will focus much more on monetary policy. So, the monetary policy aims to maintain stability in the prices of goods and services, which are reflected through inflation. So, the effectiveness of the monetary policy transmission mechanism can be seen from the inflation rate prevailing in the country while the policy was implemented. This is the Indonesia's annual inflation rate from 2018 to 2022. Problem formulation and research purposes. So the problem formulation in this research is the first one. How is inflation responding to changes in the monetary policy transmission variable of the asset price path in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic? And the purpose from the problem formulation, from the first problem formulation, is the inflation response to the changes in the monetary policy transmission variable of the asset price path in Indonesia during COVID-19 pandemic. The second one is, how is the contribution of the BI 7-day reverse repo rate interest rate variable, interbank money market, UAB interest rate, composite stock price index, IHSG, aggregate demand, output gap, and the COVID-19 pandemic can explain the amount of inflation in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic. The second chapter is literature review. There are supporting theory, relevant research, theoretical framework, and hypothesis development. The first supporting theory is quantitative theory of money from Irving Fisher, 1911. This theory examines the interaction between the demand for and supply of money and their impact on the level price. The second theory is Keynes theory of money demand. The first one is transaction motive. The need for money is driven by necessity to conduct daily transactions. The second one is speculation motive. The desire to speculate or invest in financial assets like shares, bonds, or property often motivates demands for money. The third motive is on-guard motive. The money demand motive is due to the need to hold cash for emergencies or uncertainties in the future. This theory is brought to you by John Maynard Keynes, 1936. The next one is Baumol-Tobin theory. This theory describes how individuals decide whether to hold cash or invest in productive assets that generate income based on personal preferences. This theory is from William Baumol and James Tobin from 1952. The next theory is Tobin's Q theory. Tobin's Q theory explains how stock prices are affected by monetary policy, which will ultimately affect investment spending. It's from James Tobin, 1969. The next one is the theory of the effectiveness of monetary policy. The first theory is natural rate hypothesis. This hypothesis suggests that monetary policy is effective in the short term but not in the long term. It's from Milton Friedman and Edmund Phelps, 1960s. The second theory is rational expectation hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, monetary policy is neither effective in the short nor long term. It's from Robert Lucas, 1970s. The next theory is inflation theory. Inflation theory. The first theory is quantity theory. This theory explains how the amount of money in circulation and people's expectations of rising prices contribute to inflation. This theory is from David Hume, 1752. The next theory is Keynes' theory. Keynes said that inflation occurs because there are people who want to live beyond the limits of their economic capabilities. It's from John Maynard Keynes, 1936. And the third theory of inflation is the structuralist theory. In this theory, it said that inflation is impacted by the rigidity of or inflexibility of the economic structure of developing countries. It's from the various economists. The next one is relevant research. The first research that I used in this research is the research from Arvin Kurniawan and Rini Dwi Astuti with the title Transmission Mechanism of Monetary Policy Through Asset Price and Exchange Rate Channel in Indonesia. So the study found that stock prices are more effective than bonds and exchange rates in achieving the ultimate target of economic growth. The second research is from Rifka Wilkis and Albar Tanjung with the title Analysis of Monetary Policy Transmission Through Asset Prices and Inflation Expectations in Indonesia. The results of this research show that the inflation expectations channel is more effective than the asset price channel in realizing the final inflation target. The next one is effectiveness of monetary policy transmission through banking credit channels and asset prices in the final target of inflation. It's from Muhammad Firmansyah, 2022. The results showed that the variables pay 7-day reverse repo rate, investment credit, working capital credit, IHSG, and DPK had a significant long-term effect on inflation. And the last research is from Rindani Dwi Hapsari, Mega Rahma Kurnia Putri, and Rul Huda with the title Analysis of the Effectiveness of Monetary Policy from a Conventional and Sharia Perspective on Inflation in Indonesia in 2013 to 2020. The results obtained showed that SBI has a negative effect on inflation. Then it is also known that conventional monetary policy is faster in controlling the inflation rate than Sharia monetary policy. So the next one is theoretical framework and hypothesis development. So this is the theoretical framework with two hypotheses. The first hypothesis is inflation responded quickly to changes in monetary policy transmission variables on asset price channels in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic. The second hypothesis is based 7 days reverse repo rate interest rate variables, interbank money market UAD interest rates, composite stock price index IHSG, aggregate demand, output gap, and the COVID-19 pandemic in the asset price channel monetary policy transmission mechanism contribute to explaining the magnitude of inflation in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic. The third chapter is research methods. There are object and scope of research, data collection technique, variable operationalization, and analysis technique. Object and scope of research. Object. The object that I used in this research are inflation and monetary policy transmission of asset price channels during the COVID-19 pandemic, which contains variables including BAB 7 days reverse repo rate interest rate, BAB interest rate, IHSG, aggregate demand, output gap, and the COVID-19 pandemic itself. Second one is the scope of the research. The scope of the research is between the 2019 quarter and the 2022 quarter. Next is data collection technique. Data type that I used in this research is secondary data source is monthly statistical data from the Central Bureau of Statistics, BPS, Bank Indonesia, BI, Ministry of Investment, BKPM, and Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs for 2019 to 2022. The next one, we got variable operationalization. First variable that I used is, of course, the transmission mechanism of monetary policy with asset price path. So the definition of it is transmission channels that influence the development of physical and financial asset prices. The indicators are, first, BI 7 days reverse repo rate interest rate. It's a BI policy interest rate. I got it from Seki B. And the scale of it is ratio. The second one is interbank money market interest rate, or PUAB interest rate. It's a weighted average interest rate for interbank money market transactions in rupiah conducted between domestic banks. I got it from the Seki B too. And the scale is ratio. The third one is Composite Stock Price Index, or IHSG. Index that measures the price performance of all shares on the Indonesia Stock Exchange, or BEI. The data is from Seki 2, and the scale is ratio. The fourth one is aggregate demand. So aggregate demand is a total demand for goods and services in a certain period. I got it from BPS, BKPM, and Kemenku RI, and the scale is ratio. The fifth one is output gap. Output gap is the difference between actual output and potential output, and I got it too from BPS 2, and the scale is ratio. Next variable is inflation. Inflation is a general and continuous increase in the price of goods and services over a certain period of time. The indicator is CPI. So inflation is measured through the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. CPI is an index that measures the average changes that occur in the prices of goods or services consumed over a certain period of time. Changes in CPI reflect the level of inflation. The data I got is from Bank Indonesia, and the scale is ratio. The last variable is COVID-19 pandemic. It's a global outbreak formed due to the coronavirus. So the indicator is the quarter category where the pandemic has not occurred has a value of 0. And the quarter category that has been affected by the pandemic has a value of 1. The scale of it is nominal. Next is analysis technique. So there are 5 techniques that I used in this research. The first one is the stationary test and degree of integration. Second one is co-integration test. The third one is model factor autoregressive or factor error correction model, for VECM. The fourth one is impulse response function, IRF. The fifth one is forecast error decomposition of variance, FEVD. So the result for my presentation according to my proposal seminar. Thank you for watching.